I'm Mel,
And I'm Andrea.
and we've been asking ourselves, WTF? Where's the fun?
So, welcome to our podcast for heart-led business leaders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs ready for more. More impact, more wealth, more joy, and more magic, all while having even more fun than ever before.
As co-founders of FunX, we believe that life and business is way more fulfilling when you're following the fun.
So we're flipping the script on success, giving you permission to create from a whole new paradigm where you can have a lasting impact while nurturing your well-being and having a freaking blast along the way.
So join us each week for engaging solo episodes
and real conversations with experts who are embodying this new paradigm of leadership, spiritual wealth, business growth, and of course, fun.
If you're ready to reignite your spark, make bold moves, and lead from a whole new energy,
Let's jump in and have some fun.
We just recorded a fantastic episode with Dorsey Standish.
Dorsey is an in-demand mindfulness speaker known for her relatability and neuroscience-based wellness approach. Dorsey is a mechanical engineer, cognitive neuroscientist, and a wellness expert. She's made it her mission to help high performers rewire their brains for better focus, resilience, and results without burnout. She is also just such a wealth of knowledge, but also just like a delight to talk to. I feel like Mel and I just like peppered her with a bajillion questions for you, but also for ourselves. I think you're going to love it. We talk everything from joy to performance to sleep. Really just, I think, a holistic approach to well-being. Enjoy. You're going to love it.
Welcome back to WTF. Where's the fun? I'm Mel.
And I'm Andrea.
And today we have Dorsey Standish. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be with y'all.
Yes, this is so exciting. I feel like Mel and I have been like genuinely looking forward to this ever since Matt, who's kind of both in our worlds, said, I have a guest for you. And I'm like, I am so ready because I have so many questions about this. So as you know, like we're all about giving yourself permission to have more fun, even in more joy in your life and your business. And for you and I think just your story and your background so fascinating, from mechanical engineering to cognitive neuroscience and a wellness expert, and you have kind of your own business, your own journey. You're also a speaker. Like there's so many amazing things happening there. I can't wait to just dive in to how we can like really help people understand the importance of joy and fun in your life.
For sure.
So let's start, I think, even before we dive into that, like maybe just sharing a little bit about your journey, your background, how
does a mechanical engineer go to be a wellness expert?
Not willingly. It took a lot of pain and struggle, honestly, which I think that's how all of the best changes in our lives happen, is we have these hard moments. But, to back it up even further, in the high school yearbook, they do like the in 20 years bit about each person. And what my classmates decided mine was in 20 years, Dorsey will be convincing her fellow physicists to have a good time. So I've always been like a huge nerd, like love science, but also kind of a class clown and someone that instinctively wants to have fun and find joy. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I looked for joy in all the wrong places for probably the first 25, 28 years of my life. I looked outside of myself. Thought if I had this experience, or I could try this, or be with this person in this relationship, then I would find fun. I'd be happy. I'd have mental health, all the things. And that's kind of the way I was raised. I'm super type A. I was raised by two amazing lawyers in Washington, D.C. Just knew nothing else besides kind of go to the Ivy League school, get straight A's, get the corporate job at Texas Instruments, climb the corporate ladder. I was kind of doing the next right thing, thinking that I was forging my own path, but really I was just kind of doing what society expected of me. And it wasn't until the spring of 2015 when, from the outside looking in, I'm spending my 25th birthday in Hsinchu, Taiwan on a program launch trip. I'm like managing this program of engineers traveling back and forth across the world. And my life looked great from the outside, but it wasn't apparent sort of the inside turmoil and the crumbling that was happening because I wasn't prioritizing my mental health, my sleep, my wellness over work. I put work and productivity and doing above everything else in my life. And that all came crashing down later that spring when at a routine doctor's appointment, I'm stopped and questioned, like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. They're like, you're talking really fast. I think we need to get you to a psychiatrist. We need to figure out what's going on. And it was like, I had been going a million miles an hour, and all of a sudden, thank goodness, somebody from the outside saw me and said, you need to just stop and be still, which I hadn't done probably in my whole life. And um, it started this journey for me of being forced to give up work for 2.5 months, which I had built my whole life around, and start to engineer this life for myself that was about something bigger than just doing and executing on other people's visions. And I would be lying if I said it was all happy and joyous. Of course, I look back now and I'm so grateful for the challenges that I went through. But really, the turning point for me in that experience was and I'm fielding all these voices, right? They're like doctors and experts telling me, like, you need to take this, you need to sleep this amount, like, you need to do this to get better. And there's this little voice inside of me that got louder when I was forced to stop and be still that was like, well, like, what about you? Like, what about your inner voice? Where is that in this equation? Are you the master of your own life, your own journey, or are you kind of abdicating the throne and outsourcing all these decisions to your doctors? I love Western medicine. I love all the experts we have access to in 2025. Like, so much information. ChatGPT can give us a prescription for just about anything, right?
Yeah.
But where is our own inner wisdom and knowledge in that journey? And for me, it was that kind of awakening moment that forced me to start researching, how do I connect to my inner voice? How do I stabilize my mental health and learn how to come home to myself? And for me, that was through just a 2-minute a day mindfulness meditation practice. And it was the first start of me kind of listening inwards and starting to cultivate this internal compass to match some of the external guidance and directives that were coming at me. And so that moment in spring, summer of 2015 felt like the worst thing in the world, but that small decision to prioritize myself and turn inwards is what's really sparked my journey over the past decade to re-engineering my life to make brain health and wellness the foundation and then build everything that I want and love and family and work and all the things on top of that.
I I have so many things that I could share, and it's so true. Like, and I mostly people who we work with are typically not always, but I would say more on the type A
Yeah.
side of things, like used to performing, playing at a high level, like getting them to do more is in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
No problem. I can do that. But then when it comes to slowing down, like actually slowing down, like being still or even prioritizing themselves, that's usually the thing that feels the most uncomfortable. And it's the same thing, like same with my story, my journey, very similar. It was almost like I had to have my wake up call or that health to kick me in the butt to do things differently. In your opinion, in that, because I agree, like that transition going from high performing and slowing down, I actually think makes you perform even better. But let's say that shift from the old ways of performing, like the traditional type A society's definition of success, pushing, forcing, all the things. Now you're switching to listening, like prioritizing your inner voice, tapping in, tuning in. Like for you, what was, I guess, the biggest difference maker that helped you with that transition? Because it can feel really challenging when you're in it.
Yeah, I think people really underestimate the amount of courage that it takes to slow down
Yes.
and rest. We don't talk about it enough. But you know, I didn't do it willingly that first time, and even today sometimes I still struggle with it because it can be really comfortable, right? To just do. We don't have to really necessarily feel all the feelings. We can push them down with work, or let me just help this other person. Let me do the next thing. And I've had, executives come up to me after I do a keynote, and I always include an experiential practice, like even if it's just 5 minutes of mindfulness and that turning inwards. And had executives come up to me and say, I got teary-eyed during that. Like, I try to push that down. I don't want to cry. I don't want to feel that. I think especially as women in the working world. We've trying to kind of live up to this ideal, this kind of feminine archetype, right? Of like pleasant and kind, but not too emotional. And it especially, but no matter what gender you identify with, we oftentimes feel like we have to be a certain way at work. And oftentimes that carries over into all of our life. And um, for me, that experience of being forced to slow down, it, like you said, it sucked in the moment, but I'm so glad that I had it because I don't think I would have necessarily done it willingly. I think that actually, we talk like if you think about the definition of burnout, we think about Dr. Herbert Freudenberger's framework of emotional exhaustion, physical exhaustion, a lack of caring, and just a feeling of futility. Like those are kind of the signs. And when I speak on burnout, people will be like, oh, that's me. We know that 70% of workers have experienced burnout in the past few years. But a kind of secret hidden sign that I look for personally when we're approaching burnout is a fear of being still, which you wouldn't think about, right? Because you think like somebody who's burned out is like looking for every excuse to be still. And I'm not talking like bed rotting on TikTok. Like that's not what I'm talking about for still, because you're still entertaining yourself with something in front of you because you don't want to actually feel and fully slow down and stop. So for me, like that idea of stopping and not distracting ourselves, but really just being with life and how difficult and overwhelming it can be, and all the physical feelings and emotions and stuff, the stuff moving around in our minds that we try to kind of shut down and ignore for most of the day, that takes a lot of courage. And for me, the teachings of mindfulness meditation are what have helped me kind of find a practice that I could ground in, because I am a type A structured person, like committing to that regular practice of being with myself. And then, there are thousands of years of wisdom talking us through how to deal with difficult emotions, how to go inwards, kind of how to face the fact that life is just unfolding and changing moment by moment in front of us. So I'm so grateful for that kind of knowledge base and that journey that I started just a few minutes a day. And I've done, silent meditation retreats. I've studied with amazing teachers. And then I always say that like, I love those teachers, but probably my wife and my two boys are my best teachers, because I can say whatever from the stage, but can I live it with my 14-year-old or with my toddler? Like, can I really be in the moment with them? And that's kind of the main thing I've learned. I used to be obsessed with textbooks and reading and external knowledge. And the more that I experience life, I see that life itself is really the ultimate teacher.
Mm-hmm. What happens to our brains when we are like in the burnout phase? And then what happens to the brain when you start implementing, even like what you said, like a 2-minute practice or 5-minute practice of just being? Like, what are the differences in the brain?
That's a great question, Mel. It's interesting. When I go away on silent meditation retreat, the teachers always warn us that we'll probably just want to sleep for like the first 2 or 3 days, because what happens like when people are so burned out and overworked, it's like the moment we give ourselves a chance to pause and rest, the brain's like, thank goodness I can go to sleep. Right? So honestly, like when you first start to pause, it can be a lot. And that was those first few weeks for me after my burnout experience, were just sleeping like 18 hours a day. It wasn't very glamorous. Like I think that it's really hard. Like when I talk to type A performers, they're like, how can I get over burnout in this 1 hour session with you? Like, no, got some news for you. Like, it's not that simple. There may be sort of a recalibration period, right? Because your body just may be so starved for that rest and recovery. So I don't want to scare people with that. I mean, starting with those small minutes of practice a day can make a huge difference, if nothing else, just in that kind of self-awareness piece and checking in with how you are moment to moment. But oftentimes, people that are going, when we guide a practice, they find that they're really tired, like deeply tired, and need more rest. So that's a great signal. And I even watched this with like, I chaperoned my 14-year-old went on an 8th grade field trip last week, and they got to go out in nature and kind of unplug, couldn't have their phones. And it's like us. Like if we're connected to our phone, like we'll stay awake a lot longer. Like we'll like artificially kind of cortisol, dopamine, like let's go, let's go, let's go. And when you really unplug and just kind of get back to nature, get back to yourself, you kind of naturally fall into these healthier rhythms with sleep and rest.
Yeah.
So I think for some folks, that few minutes of kind of pausing and practicing might just awaken this inner piece of self-awareness to start to make intentional decisions rather than habit loop driven, subconscious, just will let me scroll in bed until I fall asleep. So that I would say that those few minutes of practice at the beginning just start to awaken this witnessing consciousness, starts to stimulate our executive centers in the brain so that we're living less on autopilot through habitual or emotional driven reactions, and we start to act with more intention.
Today's episode of WTF, Where's the Fun? Is sponsored by The Fun Experience, a curated mastermind for established business owners, entrepreneurs, and CEOs ready for more. More magic, more joy, more wealth, and more fun than ever before. So if you're ready for a peer-to-peer mastermind that's helping you to embody more leadership, more impact, and make bold moves, The Fun Experience is where it's at.
Which I think is in itself, like, especially if somebody is type A, there's many reasons why, but also usually they want to bring out the best in themselves. Like typically there's a correlation between type A and you want to perform well. And yet it's like we're not performing our best when we're operating kind of from those outdated approaches of pushing and forcing and overworking and doing those things versus what you're saying is like, yeah, take some time to, yeah, like however it is you want to look at it, ground in, connect within, and then you're going to be operating from different energies. You're going to be more conscious, you're going to be more intentional, which then is going to make you actually perform with greater ease, joy, and I think it's just a completely different energy in how you're doing it. Like would that kind of track with the science and what you know from your studies?
Yeah, and it's so funny because you'll hear me like trade sort of Eastern and Western explanations, right? So as I'm listening to you talk, I think about the phrase I hear a lot from teachers, which is like, can you do from a place of being? Can you like be settled rather than doing? Like, can I be a human being even as I'm doing?
Yeah.
And then kind of on the research side, we actually know that after mindfulness meditation, our perception of time changes. So time actually slows down. Like it's sliced differently for our brain. So I always say, like, if you take these 5-10 minutes to practice, you're literally giving yourself time back because time will move more slowly for you after that. And, it's funny because I hear myself using this language like, you can fit more into your day and you can be more productive. And I find myself like back in that type A mindset. But there's such a paradox when it comes to meditation because I had a teacher that would say, nobody achieves non-striving without striving for it. Right? Like there has to be a desire to do, like to start a journey of meditation, which can be hard. There has to be this desire to do something. But then we learn on the journey that the magic is not in doing, it's in being. And so it's this beautiful paradox that I think, oftentimes when I'm speaking to type A audiences, I will share with them the brain health benefits, the performance benefits. For me, it was like, I want to be more resilient. I don't want to be so crazy. Like, I want to be okay. I want to listen to myself. And all that motivation, you could say that that's striving or ego or kind of doing, but thank goodness, because it got my foot in the door of meditation and it started me down that journey. So I am all for sharing these practices with my audience in a way that will resonate with them. I always talk about a head, heart, body approach. Like head is kind of the science, like, oh, your perception of time changes. Heart is, let me tell you what happened when I didn't do it, like that emotional connection. And then body is bringing them through that experience I mentioned, even if it's small, to start to give them a taste, like get their foot in the door, like some sort of experience that helps them pause long enough to say, what else is out there for me? What if I woke up a little bit? Who am I really? And that's my favorite definition of the goal of meditation from Jon Kabat-Zinn is it's only to become more of who you really are, which I think is just the most beautiful thing. So
I have I have a quick sidebar random question just as we were talking. I'm like, I wonder if she can answer this. Okay, we all know at bedtime, like, don't be on a screen, like maybe don't watch TV, right? So would you suggest doing a like talk down meditation? But some people like to read. Does that make your brain go too busy at bedtime if you're reading in bed?
The reading is great. Think about the amount of information available to you. Like if I take this, paperback book, right? Finite amount. If I take this phone, infinite amount, a million possibilities, like brain exploding, right? So this is going to keep me way more awake. Just that possibility, like as the scrolling, like I would say, like if there's one decision that you can make to improve your sleep and your mental health, it would be taking your phone out of your bedroom, like
Yeah.
not scrolling right before bed. Because not only is it the blue light, it's the stimulation, and then you're focused in really close on your screen, which also stimulates that fight or flight nervous system. So I always say, like, if you want to watch Netflix, especially with your pet or your wife, like go for it. Just wear blue light glasses and have it far away. So it's like a panoramic gaze. You're looking at the screen far away, and you're hopefully, having some social connection or oxytocin release as you're doing it. I'm never going to say don't do screens. I'm just going to say do them in a smart way. And then to think about books, like, again, there's such a limited amount of information in the pages. Most of my clients that read will find themselves like maybe getting excited and going to the next chapter or something, but it's a wonderful way for the brain to wind down, especially with a fiction book or something where you're kind of, taken away from daily life and given that experience. So it could be reading, it could be a hot bath, which helps your temperature drop to optimize sleep. It could be guided meditation, as you mentioned, some light stretching. My wife and I will play conversation cards sometimes and like try to, have a different kind of connection to unplug a little bit. But it takes a little bit of effort because the phone's the easiest thing. But again, anything we can do to take back charge of our own lives and say, this is how I want to spend my time. This is how I really have fun. This is how I experience wellness.
Yeah.
It can make such a difference.
I was just wondering because sometimes Andy's like, "Will you read to me at bed?" And I'm like, "Okay." So like we'll read. We're reading a book together. That's why. And I'll look over and like 5 minutes later, she's out like cold. But like I'm like, I want to know what happens. Like maybe I just have a monotone voice that just
You just totally do. It's like absolutely no emphasis on, it's like a run-on sentence the whole time, but it's great. I do love it.
And that's why, sleep stories, or listening to audiobooks, like that's why I say, like, put your phone out of your room and then use a smart speaker so you're listening to a podcast or an audiobook, because listening is going to be less engaging than, looking at something on your phone. So
yes.
And to me, run us off like completely
I
different.
knew I would.
But now I want to jump on that bandwagon, and I know it has not the route we were going, but because I think this is a fascinating example. Like let's use the phone. And for me, what I noticed in policing, that I was so addicted to the shitstorm. So constantly over and over, it's like I had my work phone and there's nothing good happening on the work phone.
Yeah.
And then I'd wake up and I listen to the radio and there's nothing good that's happening on the radio. And then I'd get to work and then I'd look at our debriefing of like all the arrests and all this shit show that happened, especially in the morning. And I felt like that was definitely contributing to, like, I was addicted to like
Chaos.
yes. So then I started to realize, okay, that's not good. And then at night it was the same patterns. So then I was like, I started small. I just stopped looking at my work phone, and then I stopped listening to the radio, and then I started implementing meditation and some mindfulness. I basically went inward before I consumed anything. And that was one thing that I noticed had shifted. So I guess, like, is that part of it as well? Is like the more we focus on, whether it's like the more you focus on, let's say, the negativity or like the things that really ramp up your cortisol and that stuff like that, you just then crave more of it, and then vice versa. Like the more you feel peace and calm, the more you want more of that.
Yeah, I think we're so habit driven and we don't realize it, but 45 to 90% of what we do every day is habitual. And that's our brain's way of saving us energy. We don't have to make conscious decisions. And we get really used to what we're used to. Like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but for me, like, I can find myself starting a new habit of drinking magnesium water in the morning. Like, within a few days, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for that water. That's a positive example. But same thing if we're on vacation and I have my phone in my room. I'm like, oh, I could get used to reading the Washington Commanders football news right before bed. Like, I'm a football fan. So it's like stuff like that. It's just, you don't realize how quickly something can become a habit. And so what you're sharing about, your experience policing and consuming the news, a lot of us don't realize it's easy to say, oh, it's so annoying to see all this bad news, but we miss what you saw, which is, wow, it's kind of addictive. I'm kind of used to this. I'm actually reading a story about the Vietnam War right now. That's my like fiction book for bedtime. And it's this nurse who served in Vietnam and she comes back and she's like, oh my God, like where are the bombings? Where's the drive? Like there's no, like her nervous system was so used to being in fight or flight constantly, it felt like something was missing for her when she came back. And so that's an extreme example, but like leaving policing or stopping listening to the news, like there's going to be this fallout and you might find like, oh, I have less energy because we're actually using those adrenaline spikes to get us going. Like the news kind of ramps us up. But I do think kind of the way you did it of a slow shift of let me just curtail this a little bit and start to shift. And then I love what you said about meditation in the morning before taking in external news. That's probably, besides the sleep, kind of shutting that down at night, like the morning time is so special when we're shifting from sleeping to waking. And if we can take time to go inwards, even for a few minutes, we're still in bed, we're doing a body scan, or maybe we roll over and write down a couple things we're grateful for, or, journal about what's most important that day before we check our email, before we scroll social media, before we listen to the news, because it's so easy to be defined by all the inputs coming at us constantly. I read one neuroscientist said that our attention is worth like $5,500 a week because all the apps we use make money off of the fact that we're on them, right? So our attention is really valuable and we give it away so freely. And in today's oversaturated, hyper-connected world, taking that time to connect inwards first will give us a better compass. Of course, we're going to read the news, we're going to check our email, we're going to live in 2025, but can we do that from this internal compass? And I think that really starts with what you're talking about, Andrea, of going inwards first in the morning.
Yeah. And what if we were to really like keep going with that just a little bit, I found that was a shift in habit, which then, yeah, it was simple things. Like I think it's simple things, but then like a big thing of that we're like believers in is the questions you're asking yourself too, going from, I think, yeah, like, well, why is this happening? Or this isn't working out, or just kind of looking at things that maybe are down that, I don't even want to say negative side of things, but the things that you don't necessarily want. Maybe it's like responding, but a lot of the subconscious stuff that just continuously runs versus like possibility questions. And one of our favorites is just asking like, what would make this more fun? And then that helps us tune in. But then we're like, well, like my favorite game to play is wouldn't it be wild? And it's like, wouldn't it be wild if, or wouldn't it be fun if? And then we're just like tuning in, but also playing in like a whole different arena of possibilities. And I have found like besides the small simple shifts, like that the shift in question has been probably the biggest shift in how our inner life as well. But I would say like as a whole, that has been one of the biggest differences for us.
I love that. It's so funny because I teach clients different, I call them reframe questions. I do not yet use the one, how could this be more fun? So I'll have to try that on a construction site on Thursday and see how the crazy looks they give me. But I will say, like, when we're thinking about building resilience or managing stress, there are different ways we can do it. And so what you're talking about asking different questions, it's so easy to run on autopilot, to kind of act habitually and reactively, as we've been talking about. But when we ask ourselves a question, it forces those rational brain areas, kind of the CEO of the brain, to get involved. And so questioning can help kick in the prefrontal cortex and help us to see a situation differently. And one of my favorite questions, kind of similarly to yours, the ones that I use, what's not wrong? Like, because we're so wired to think what's wrong. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I have an internet connection, I have lunch. Like, it's just silly stuff. But if I can start to go down that rabbit hole, or I call it an upward spiral, like these, I think resilience is really built in these small moments when we're tired and we close our eyes for 2 minutes and breathe rather than scrolling on social media.
Yeah.
Or we're having a hard time in our relationship, and rather than zoning out, we zone in. We say, hey, like, let's spend a few moments together. Like, hold my hand or give me a 6-second kiss, as John Gottman would say, right? Like, we choose the hard, vulnerable thing in that moment. And that creates, instead of that downward spiral of negative habit, more stress, like, it creates this upward spiral of like, oh, let me build this new positive coping mechanism, this small little brick. And what's so cool about our habits is they really shape our identity. So you've become, Andrea, in your shift in habits, like you've changed how you feel about yourself by these small choices that you've made. And this question that's become so fundamental for you all, like, how can we make this fun? Like, that's part of who you are now. And so reframing it, whether it's that question, whether it's like, how will this change in a week, a month, a year? I love that travel and time kind of thing. Or am I the only one this has ever happened to? Because when we're stressed, we think, oh, it's all me. Like, I'm the only mom that's ever had a sick baby. And like, it's so what questions can we ask, to your point, that help us reframe, see things differently, and give us that energy and shift in mindset we need to go tackle the problem?
But I love that. That makes so much sense. Okay, so while we're playing in that, it's like, so we're asking better questions. We're having courage to also, I think, tune in and feel in. And I think that's so important, because you're right. Like, if you're shutting down your emotions, your feelings, all of the joy, by shutting down all of the other things that you're suppressing too, that's not going to help. So allowing yourself to have courage to also feel, I think, feel joy. This was actually something we talked about even recently. It was like, I had such a, and I honestly think that I'm still working on it. I think a lot of us are, is rewiring or making our nervous system feel safe experiencing joy and fun, whatever that means to you. But it really is a different, I think, energy, a different state of being. And have you found that it could be in your own personal journey or just through the work that you have done, is that there is also kind of almost like this, could be mental, could be physiological, could be all the above, but a correlation between it feeling unsafe to actually experience joy?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I think it ties into the theme that you mentioned as well, we've been talking about, which is the courage to feel our feelings. And a lot of times, if we open up to joy, we're also opening up to deep sorrow, and the opposite side of the spectrum. I think that, it's so easy to think mental health is like the smiley emoji all the time, but that's not mental health. Mental health is having appropriate emotions in the context of a situation and feeling like you are resourced to deal with those most of the time. So mental health inevitably means kind of this roller coaster of life that maybe you get a little bit better at, at kind of steering or modulating, but opening up to joy, to happiness, to presence, it requires letting go of control. It requires probably like vulnerability, connecting, opening outwards. It's not a safe kind of solo thing. It can be really vulnerable. And I love that you bring that up, because what you're making me think of is my 14-year-old son. And he and I say they're all my teachers, but he's probably my biggest teacher. Because if you ask me what the point of life is, it's really around growth and connection. And if you ask him what the point of life is, it's to have the most fun in every moment. Okay? So this is like, it's like every moment of every day. It's like, well, what if we added a bubble machine to this? Or like, why don't we just do a Netflix movie marathon? Like, he's like asking that question of how could this be more fun constantly in his head. And it really challenges my orientation towards what we've talked about, which is doing, which is growth, which is kind of making every moment count. And I think for a lot of us type A achievers, we learned that fun was a waste of time, or that joy was a silly emotion that didn't get us anywhere. So I think it's kind of like anything else. If we want to really embrace joy and fun and value that, we have to ask questions, like ask our way into it, and start to see how that fun or that joy could tie into our bigger concept of life, and how that matters. So my my older son drives me crazy half the time, but he has literally exponentially increased the amount of funds that I have in my daily life, for sure.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that too. It's like, and it's so funny when I get the privilege of watching everybody when Andy talks on stage, because I already know what she's gonna say. I already know everything she's doing in her keynote, and watching all these like high performers, whether they're entrepreneurs or like CEO of big companies, I get to watch them like, and they're so up here in their heads at the beginning. And then about halfway through, they start dropping down into here. And then by the end, their whole like postures change, like their faces all change, and they're all like asking different questions. And it just becomes like this energy wave in the room that I get to watch like go like this. And it's just so cool. And I just love everything you're talking about, like connecting everything back to science. I love it.
Yes, it's so much fun. And I would love, I know I want to see your keynote, Andrea, because I'm always playing like, I've been doing a lot of in-person training work, kind of getting back into that team building space since the pandemic. And I've slowly started to increase the amount of fun that we have. We play games like emotion charades, like who can act out, sadness. And it gets these, like type A, or, folks on the construction side or the finance firm, gets them out of their comfort zone. And it's that thing you described of like, and they dropping down to being, or like we'll do team teaching where they explain the concepts we learned and give out Starbucks gift cards to the best team that they vote for. Just like fun stuff like that ties into our natural wiring as human beings to be competitive, to be communal and connected. And like once they make that shift, it's so much fun, and they're so much more open to learning from there.
Yeah. It's sorry, I was gonna say, like, as like we get older, we go away from that. So I really hope your son never goes away from that.
Yeah.
But it happens to everybody, like even you were such a fun-loving kid, and then just society, the thing we talked about at the beginning of checking the boxes, making them proud, like how do I get ahead? How do I do all this, climb the corporate ladder? And they get so far away from their fun. So like our mission is to bring everyone back to their fun and joy.
What I've also found too, it just through coaching people and through my own research, is typically people who are sensitive are the ones that then switch really into their head. They become very analytical in order to feel safer or be safer. And so secretly, the people that are very in their head are also very fun people. They're probably have just like so much joy that's just looking to come out. It just creating a safe space in order for them to explore it is, I think, important. But also there's one last thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up. There's a couple things. One of them is that joy lives in the present. And is there any, like, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but the importance of being in the present and how we can connect that even to either the science behind it or even just the impact of being in the present, or what the present even means, or what that sentence even means, because I think it's easy to say, but it's not always easy for people to. Sometimes it's still a very intellectual concept that I think needs to be experienced in order to be really embodied.
For sure. I'm totally that person that if I hadn't been so desperate, I would have read like 10 books on mindfulness and been like, oh, check that box, right? Like never actually practiced. It's so easy to intellectualize this idea of being in the present moment or experiencing emotion. And you're so right that it really is about being here now, being in the present moment. My kind of informal definition is just being where our feet are physically. So often our heads are way out into the future or back in the past, or they're judging and labeling everything that's around us in the present moment. And practices like mindfulness or doing improv or asking questions like, how could this be more fun, force us to live right here, right now, which, emotions are only alive, can only be felt in this present moment. So to be able to process the challenging ones, to experience the full highs of joy and connection and fun that I hear you talking about your executives making that journey. I see that too. We have to get out of our heads to some extent, out of that kind of judgmental, analytical mind space, wanting to be the expert. So much I think of what both you and I do is we get people out of their traditional role of the manager or like you're a human being.
Yeah.
Connection happens here. Life happens here in the present moment. What are different ways that we can start to access that energy and that joy that's always available to us right here, right now? So for me, mindfulness was kind of my gateway into that fun. Like if you think back to what I said at the beginning about helping my fellow physicists have a good time, I would say using neuroscience to help other people have a good time by being with themselves in the present moment. That if we truly think about having fun, it really starts with being where our feet are, with being open and curious. And the last thing I'll say about this, I mentioned my 14-year-old, but my 2-year-old as well. He is so in the present moment. If you have kids or pets or like, they are just, they haven't been through life enough to know any different. So their brains are just these beautiful, like constantly rewiring, moldable plastic things that just want to touch and feel and sense everything. And he could say the same joke like 10 times and laugh uproariously every time. Like, like really believe it. He could play with his dinosaurs for hours, just, like just in the moment. And that kind of magic, I think it's, mindfulness and fun. It's less about learning something new. I think these things are more about remembering that natural human capacity that we all have that requires that journey we've been talking about, from the head to the heart, to slowing down, to going inwards and really connecting with that place of humanity and presence that we all have within us.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
How can people learn more about you, the work that you do, how they can connect with you?
Yes, my company Mastermind is mastermindmeditate.com, and then my personal website is dorseystandish.com. I love to work with organizations. We also have a few programs for individuals as well who are wanting to grow their brain health and wellness with this connection to themselves at the forefront. I will say I'm probably most active on LinkedIn socially. We talked about phones already, so I make the choice to not have Instagram or Facebook on my phone so I can be as present as possible for my kiddos. But I do love LinkedIn. I think it's probably my corporate nerdy self, but I have a lot of fun on that platform. So if you want to send me a message there or connect, I'd love to hear what you took away from this episode, what might have been surprising for you. I'm actually working on a book and a podcast myself. So if any of your audience is like, I want to hear more about that, I would love to know that, because it'd help me continue to reach audiences like yours.
Oh, this is incredible. And this is so not related to anything we talked about, but I did hear you on, it might have been actually LinkedIn, and you shared about a different interview that you were in, and it was like, don't keep hitting your alarm in the morning. So ever since I read that, I'm like, I'm up. I'm not going.
I've actually never seen her get up quicker.
Like, I'm going. She's like, she said it's good for my brain. I'm into it. So
I was like, it's good for my brain to lay a little longer.
That's so funny. Yeah, I did. That was Good Morning Texas, the 10-3-2-1-0 sleep method, which we talked about sleep today. I love that. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad that worked for you. And you're such a inspiration of these small little changes, like that you can show that to your audience. I think it's such a myth in our culture that, the person that loses 250 pounds or like has a rock bottom moment and turns their whole life around. the past 10 years have been pretty messy, and it didn't look so great 8 years ago. And even today, I have so much growth and work to do, but that's part of being human. And I think it's those small moments of shift, those upward spirals that we create when we make those small changes for ourselves.
Yeah. And then it's sustainable. And then I don't know, it's fun for me. I love learning. So that's always fun for me. Do you have a sample or an experience of some of your mindfulness that people can connect with? I know you sent me some links, so we'll make sure we put that in the show notes as well. But I know for me, I'm personally curious, like, okay, how can I experience some of these types of, even in the morning, meditations?
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked a lot about, whether it's nighttime wind down or kind of how you start your morning. I would say just those first few minutes in the morning are so precious as you've discovered for yourself. I would love to give away a 4-minute mindful morning meditation to folks. It has a little bit of breathing and, gratitude reflection question for folks to kind of set their intention for the day. It's just 4 minutes. We all have 1,440 minutes in every day. So I promise you can find time to do that, even in bed or before the kids get you up or before you kind of roll out of bed and start the doing. Taking that time to set the tone for your day and set that inner connection will make such a big difference. And we've talked so much about small sustainable shifts, but please don't go out and say, Dorsey told me to meditate for an hour a day, or I'm going to go to India for 2 months. If you really feel called to do that, like, please do. That's amazing. But I would say just start where you are, make that small shift, just spending a few minutes in the morning, and let that be sustainable. As you said, Andrea, let that create this kind of small, subtle shift that's almost like a snowball. It's like, wow, I can't wait to add more and learn more and keep growing in this way.
That's amazing. I love it. So if you were to share one last thing from your heart to our listeners' heart, what would it be?
I think that a lot of type A people don't give themselves enough credit. They might be listening to this podcast to figure out how to improve themselves or what they need to do differently. And I would just invite you to take a breath and appreciate that you're a living, breathing human. Your feet are hopefully on the floor. You're doing the best you can, and take a moment right now to reflect on just a few things that you're already doing for your health and wellness today, and let that positive self-regard and connection to your intention to show up as your best self, let that be the foundation of your growth, rather than a feeling of inadequacy or needing to be better or different, because you're already so amazing.
That's so good. I love it.
So much for being here.
Yeah, I feel like we'll have to connect outside of this, because I just love chatting about all of this stuff.
I totally agree. This has been so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to WTF. Where's the fun?
We're Andrea and Mel, and we're so excited to be on this journey with you to see how fun it can get.
If today's episode brought a little bit more fun into your world, be sure to subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review.
And remember, life and business is so much better when you're following the fun. So let's have some fun.